A billionaire stranger sent a private jet to abduct me. All because my blood perfectly matched his dead wife's. He's a fiercely powerful man who always gets exactly what he wants. And what he wants is the truth about my missing 28 years. Little did I know, the secretive woman he's mourning is the sister I never knew existed. And stepping into his highly secured penthouse might mean I can never escape his grasp. Today you and I are going to unpack this massive drama together, so let me set the scene. Our girl Emma is living her totally normal life when an email from the organ donor registry drops. Usually, it is just spam begging for blood, right? She signed up years ago after a documentary guilt trip, and being O-negative means they never leave her alone. But this time, the email claims they found a 1 in a million genetic anomaly. Her DNA is a flawless match with a donor who literally passed away 3 years ago. Boom, absolute medical impossibility, right out of nowhere. Here is your first lesson for today. Sometimes the absolute biggest plot twists of your entire life are sitting quietly in your junk mail folder, just waiting to detonate. Picture this. Emma is sitting in her tiny, overpriced Seattle apartment, staring at her laptop like it just grew a second head. A genetic match with a deceased stranger. The math is definitely not mathing. Bro, because our girl is a literal orphan. She grew up bouncing from one foster home to another, aging out at 18 with absolute zero biological ties. The sudden, heavy realization that she might actually have real blood relatives out there hits her right in the chest. She wastes zero time and instantly dials the registry. A panicked lady named Patricia answers, and Emma demands answers. Patricia scrambles and puts her on hold, transferring her to Big Boss, Dr. Reeves. The simple lesson here: always demand answers when things look sketchy. Patricia drops the classic corporate line about this being a highly sensitive matter, transferring our girl 2 more times. Finally, she gets Dr. Reeves on the line, and the dude sounds completely panicked. He immediately starts interrogating Emma about her family tree. Emma shuts that down fast, explaining she was abandoned baby. Reeves verifies she is 28, then drops an absolute nuke on her reality. Emma perfectly matches a woman named Sophia Moretti, who flatlined 3 years ago from a heart defect. But get this, chat. Their markers are so insanely identical that they are either full siblings or literal twins. The crazy catch: Sophia was 32 when she passed. The lesson: sometimes life hands you a mystery that completely defies all human logic. Emma's entire universe completely flips upside down in an instant. A sister, a potential twin sister. She is completely shook, demanding to know how a basic blood registry even figures this stuff out. The doctor nervously explains that normally, they do not. But Sophia's wealthy husband donated her entire genetic profile to medical science. When Emma submitted her DNA for a totally random ancestry study last month, the computer system went absolutely crazy. Boom. Unprecedented similarities. They share 47% of their DNA, which is straight up full sibling territory. Emma is spiraling, thinking, why did nobody tell me when she was actually breathing? The harsh lesson here, guys. The system does not care about your family union unless there is money involved. Hold on your seats, because the plot thickens massively. It turns out Sophia's wealthy widower has been dumping mountains of cash into research his dead wife's condition, supposedly trying to stop others from getting sick. When Emma's profile pops up like a glowing red beacon, Dr. Reeves admits the guy went absolutely feral. The husband wants to meet Emma face to figure out how she exists and why she was scrubbed from Sophia's history. Emma is like, bro, I am literally a clueless foster kid. I have zero answers. But the doctor warns that this widower, Dante Moretti, is aggressively insistent. He thinks Emma holds the cheat codes to his wife's secret past. Real talk chat. Money cannot buy peace, but it can certainly buy answers. Now, a normal person would have blocked the number, right? Running far away from a shady billionaire and his dead wife is just basic survival. But the temptation of finding out where she actually came from is way too juicy. Emma caves and asked for his digits. She dials Dante that exact same night, her hands physically shaking. The dude picks up on the second ring, sounding like an absolute mob boss with a slick Italian accent. Emma introduces her. But Dante ignores the pleasantries and immediately demands her exact location. When she says Seattle, he casually drops the craziest flex ever. He is sending a private jet, and she is flying to New York by tomorrow morning. Life lesson: bold moves always control the board. Emma tries to hit the brakes. Like, whoa buddy, I can't just ditch my life and hop on a jet. But Dante is having absolutely none of it. He goes full boss mode. promising to reimburse all her lost wages and cover every single expense without blinking. He is literally begging her, his tough voice actually cracking when he says his dead wife's name. Sophia was his entire universe. And he has been suffering through 3 agonizing years of dead ends, trying to unearth her secrets. He is convinced Emma is the missing puzzle piece. When Emma repeats that she is just a clueless foster kid, Dante coldly declares that they will hunt down the truth together. He barks out the orders. Plane takes off at 6. A car rolls up at 5. The lesson: if you want results, you have to take charge. Before Emma can even argue, this absolute unit of a man just hangs up the phone. He actually hangs up. Emma's left standing in her cheap apartment, weighing her options. Stick with me here, because you and I both know she is making a wild choice. Is this the dumbest, most dangerous mistake of her life, or a literal golden ticket? A total stranger is deploying a private jet to drag her across the country to talk about a dead woman she never met. Red flags are waving everywhere. But she could finally get her true origin story. She dials her roommate, Jessica, dropping the heaviest opening line. I need you to track my location just in case I vanish. Always share your location, guys. That is just basic street smarts. Emma spills the entire tea to her roommate, the freak DNA match, the sister she never knew, and the outrageously rich widower who just casually ordered a private jet like it is a late-night ride. Jessica immediately calls it out, saying this sounds exactly like a cheap thriller movie, where the main character gets trapped in a sketchy warehouse. But Emma is desperate for the lore. Jessica lays down the ultimate ground rules. Keep the location sharing on. Do not ghost me. And look up this Dante guy before stepping onto his private plane. So Emma starts digging into the internet. Dante Moretti is top-tier elite, a billionaire real estate mogul owning half the coast. The photos show this insanely gorgeous guy glaring at the camera. Lesson: always do your background checks. The internet is fully stocked with old pictures of Dante and his late wife, Sophia. She was this stunning brunette with bright eyes and a smile that could melt ice. They looked ridiculously in love. Couple energy. Her public obituary painted a tragic picture. A sudden drop, dead heart defect, leaving her billionaire husband completely shattered. But then, Emma stumbles on the real spicy stuff. A shady gossip block from a year after Sophia died drops a massive bombshell headline. It claims Dante hired an army of private investigators to tear apart his dead wife's past, heavily implying she was living a dark double life. The lesson here is incredibly simple. Nobody's life is as perfect as it looks on the internet. Reading that article sends a massive eye chill right down Emma's spine. What exactly was her dead sister hiding from this terrifyingly rich guy? Does she really want to step into this messy family drama? But she knows she cannot live the rest of her life wondering if she really had a sister out there. So by 4:30 in the morning, she is packed and standing on the curb. A slick black car rolls up, driven by a silent guy who throws her bags in the trunk without a single word. Very sketchy vibes. The private jet is next-level luxury, with a flight attendant offering her morning champagne. Emma rejects the booze, buzzing with anxiety, and stays awake the whole ride. The lesson here: running from your truth will always haunt you. During that agonizing flight, her brain is running absolute marathons. If Sophia was really her blood sister, who ripped them apart in the first place? Why were they kept entirely in the dark? The jet finally touches down at exclusive airfield right out to New York City. Another sleek, bracked out car is waiting on the tarmac. This driver actually speaks, announces the big boss, Mr. Moretti, is waiting at his personal fortress. 40 minutes later, they pull up to a monstrous penthouse in Tribeca. This place screams infant money. Emma's palms are literally dripping sweat as security escort her up a vite elevator in the top floor. The lesson: stepping out of your comfort zone is terrifying, but it is the only way you grow. The penthouse is absolute insane, packed with ultra-modern furniture, priceless art, and massive glass walls overlooking the entire Manhattan skyline. And standing right there by the glass, looking like a literal boss surveying his kingdom, is Dante. He turns around, and Emma actually stops breathing for a second. In person, toweringly tall, ripped with dark hair and flawless skin, but those eyes, man, his eyes are pitch black, locking on her with a crazy mix of hardcore suspicion and some twisted emotion she cannot read. He starts walking toward her, moving with the silent grace of a dangerous predator. He thanks her for coming, but Emma claps back, saying he gave her zero choice. The lesson: always stand your ground. Let's pause right here, guys, because you and I both know how this usually plays out. Dante does not even flinch at her attitude. He just stares her down with that icy glare and reminds her that he could have flown his private jet back completely empty. Boarding that flight was entirely her choice. He steps into her space, looking her up and down like a bad investment, and flat out tells her she looks nothing like his late wife. Sophia had glowing tan skin and dark hair, while Emma is pale and blonde. But our girl refuses to fold. She whips out her phone, pulls up an old photo showing her natural dark hair, and shoves it right in his face. The life lesson here is simple: always keep your receipts. You never know when you will need to prove who you are to some ruthless guy holding all the cards. Picture the tension in this room right now. Emma is perched on the edge of a custom leather sofa that probably cost more than her rent for a decade. Sweating through her shirt, across from her sits Dante, the insanely wealthy widow who just flew her across the country. He casually pours water from a crystal pitcher, like interrogating strangers is his regular Tuesday routine. Then he drops a massive bombshell. His dead wife, Sophia, was essentially a phantom before they met. She completely erased her own history. It breaks your heart. But it leaves us a vital life lesson. You absolutely cannot build a solid future with someone if your entire past is a fabricated lie. Emma, playing it smart, admits she searched his name online. Who can blame her? If a mysterious guy sends a jet, you do your homework. Dant leans forward, the intensity suffocating. After Sophia passed, he hired elite investigators because grief could not mask the red flags. The woman he loved had a fake birth certificate, and the hospital had zero record of her tragic dead parents. Total phantoms with no death certificates. Dant stares a hole through Emma, reeling his wife spawned into reality at age 18. But the plot thickens. Emma triggered a medical registry as a direct genetic match. Emma's 28. Sophia was 32. The lesson here is clear: the truth always finds a way to the light, no matter how deeply you bury it. Stick with me here, guys, because we are about to uncover what really went down. Emma bounced around foster care with absolutely zero family. Sophia fed Dante the exact same tragic story. He pieces it together and drops a heavy theory these two were separated as kids. And somebody scrubbed Sophia from the map. Dant pulls out a thick folder, spreading faded photos across the table. His team tracked down old yearbook from a forgotten logging town in Oregon. Emma freezes. Staring back is a dark-haired teenager, full of life. They absolute dead riggers for sisters. It just proves a simple lesson: no matter how far you run, your true bloodline always leaves a visible trail. The smiling teenager in that yearbook is not named Sophia. Her name is printed as Sarah Winters. But Dant taps the glossy page, his voice cracking just a bit, as he swears he would reckon his wife anywhere. He hunted for any trace of the Winters family, but they evaporated after her senior year. No forwarding address, no bank records, absolute zero digital footprint. Dant was drowning in dead ends until Emma randomly flagged in that donor database. But in a rare moment of grace, Dant offers her an escape hatch. He tells her she can walk out the door, take his limo back to the airport, and leave this trauma behind forever. It is the ultimate crossroads, teaching us that sometimes the hardest choice is deciding whether to leave a painful past buried deep in the dirt. This is the part that just shatters you. Dant stands up, pacing over to the massive window, the room suffocating with his grief. He spent 3 entire years deeply loving a woman who was essentially a stranger. When she died, he lost her twice, once to the grave, and once to the brutal realization that her identity was a total lie. He looks back at Emma, his eyes pleading, asking if she doesn't want to finally know where she comes from. Emma cracks. She agrees to help, but lays down one unbreakable rule. If they dig up some twisted reason why Sophia vanished, he cannot hold it against her. It teaches us a beautiful lesson: real love means accepting someone entirely, even their darkest hidden shadows. Dante's hard features completely soften, and he swears to her zero judgment, just answers, as he sits back down. Emma finally clocks just how physically terrifying this guy actually is. He is built like a concrete wall, practically radiating this intense power that fills the entire room. She takes a breath and asks the big question: how do they even begin to track down a ghost? Dante does not hesitate. They are going straight to Riverside, Oregon. His paid suits hit a dead end, but he wagers Emma's identical face will rattle the locals into talking. He already has his phone in hand, casually mentioning the jet leaves at dawn. The lesson is simple: real power is having the absolute conviction to take immediate action. Emma is caught completely off balance. She fully expected to grab her cheap suitcase and fly back to her invisible life in Seattle. Instead, Dant is staring at her with those dark, shattered eyes, silently begging her not to walk away. He knows it is completely insane to ask a stranger to abandon her life for a dead woman she never even met. But she is the only beacon of hope he has had in 3 years. Emma has a quiet moment of brutal honesty right here. She thinks about her miserable barista job, her tiny apartment, and that crushing emptiness of having zero purpose. It reminds us of a harsh life lesson: when the universe throws a terrifying door open, sometimes you just have to walk through it. She stares the billionaire dead in the eyes and issues a firm ultimatum. He gets exactly 3 days. She sets the boundary loud and clear: 3 days to find a solid lead, or she is on the next flight home. Dante accepts and offers his hand. When their hands meet, Emma feels the raw iron in his grip. His rough calluses tell a real story. This guy fought for his fortune with his own bare hands, against all logic. Our girl is officially partnering with a billionaire to chase a ghost. Dante leads her to a guest suite that completely puts her Seattle apartment to shame. It boasts imported marble and a jaw-dropping city view. Then, he casually drops that he already had his staff fill the closet with clothes in her exact size. It shows us a quick lesson: true wealth is really just the power to control every variable around you. Now, you and I are going to look at this together and decide if this is romantic or completely unhinged. Emma freezes, asking how he could possibly know her exact measurements. Dante does not even blink. He flat out admits he pulled the private airport security footage and had his team estimate her sizing. Emma immediately calls out the crazy, telling him that is deeply terrifying. Dante flashes a rare smile and admits she is right. Obsessively controlling every tiny detail is exactly how he survived and built his empire from nothing. It is a giant red flag waving in the wind, but it teaches us a fascinating lesson. The very traits that make someone incredibly successful in business can also make them entirely dangerous in real life. He lingers by the door, and his heavy armor finally cracks just a little bit. Dante quietly promises he is not trying to trap her in some golden cage. He admits his desperation to uncover the truth about his dead wife is making him cross serious boundaries. He begs Emma to check him if he pushes too hard, and you have to appreciate a man who actually owns his toxic traits. She gives him a nod, thanking him for the clothes. Dante tells her to come down for dinner at 7 because his housekeeper is making fresh pasta, and then he vanishes. Emma slowly opens the massive closet doors and stares at racks of premium denim and soft sweaters. The lesson here is clear: when a deeply guarded person finally lowers their walls, pay attention. Every single piece of fabric fits her flawlessly, but it leaves a cold knot in her stomach. Instead of feeling pampered, Emma feels like a curated doll for a man with endless cash. She pulls on some soft leggings and spends the next few hours aggressively researching Riverside on her phone. It is a fading logging town with barely 5,000 residents. We all know how small towns work: there are 0 secrets. Which means somebody there definitely knows what happened to Sarah Winters. At 7, she wanders down to a dining room that belongs in a museum. Dante is sitting alone at a massive table, wearing a tight black shirt. Then, his housekeeper swoops in with steaming pasta. It reminds us that you can run from your past, but you can never erase the whispers left behind. Marie fussing over them is the exact warmth this freezing house needs. This sweet older lady admits she has practically been force-feeding Dante since his wife died, scolding the billionaire for never sleeping. Once Marie shuffles out, Dante gives a tired chuckle. They sit in a peaceful silence for a while, just enjoying the meal. But Emma cannot hold back anymore. She asks the heavy question, desperate to know what her missing sister was actually like in reality. Dante slowly sets his fork down, and you can visibly see the ghosts pulling him under. He whispers that Sophia was pure light. We have all known someone like that, right? It teaches us a beautiful lesson. The only part of your legacy that truly matters is how you made other people feel. Let's pause right here. Guys, Dante is sitting there painting this beautiful picture of Sophia. She loved wandering through art galleries, baked cakes for the doorman every winter, and cried over sad movies. Emma thinks she sounds like an absolute angel. But then, Dante flips the script, and the vibe gets ice cold. He reveals she was intensely guarded. She flat out refused to have kids and never explained why. She suffered from brutal night terrors, waking up screaming, but shut down if he asked about it. She obsessively checked locks, scanning every room like a paranoid spy. Dante used to think it was just anxiety, but now the terrifying truth is clicking into place. Life lesson here. Folks, sometimes a locked door is not about keeping the world out, but keeping the trauma hidden. You and I are going to unpack this together, guys, because this is where the danger level completely redlines. Dante locks eyes with Emma. laying out the chilling reality that Sophia was running from a massive, violent threat. Think about it. If someone went to the insane trouble of erasing Sophia's past and ripping two sisters apart, that shadowy threat is still out there. The lesson here is brutal secrets do not just fade away with time. They fester in the dark until they are ready to strike. Dante warns Emma she is a walking target now, which is exactly why she needs to stay locked inside his New York fortress. But the second they step foot in that tiny Oregon town asking about Sarah Winters, the monsters in the dark are going to wake up and start hunting. Now watch how this unfolds, because the drama hits a totally different level here. The big billionaire boss drops a massive bomb on our girl Emma. He looks her dead in the eye and tells her that helping him paints a giant bullseye on her back. But the kicker, she is already in the danger zone. He swears to protect her, admitting that losing her would be exactly like watching his wife die all over again. Later, he brings Emma into his private study, and it is pure madness, walls plastered with files, red string, and photos, full obsessive detective mode. He was legally married to this woman, yet had to launch a massive investigation just to figure out her real name. Life lesson here. Folks, sometimes the people sleeping right next to you are the absolute biggest mysteries of all. Dant casually waves at this mountain of paperwork, dropping the cold hard facts. Sophia literally did not exist before she turned 18. He points to a crazy timeline on his corkboard. Originally, she was Sarah Winters, living quietly in a small town till she was 17, then, boom, her foster parents are wiped out in a brutal car crash. She vanishes into thin air, only to pop back up in New York rocking a fake identity as Sophia Moretti. Emma is completely stunned, asking how a traumatized teen deer pulls off a Black Ops-level disappearing act. Dante just smirks and says one word: money. She dropped heavy cash on the black market to scrub her existence clean. Let that be a lesson. Guys, money cannot buy happiness, but it can definitely buy you a brand new life. Dante taps a finger against a photo of teenage Sarah and hits Emma with the million-dollar question. Why was she running? And exactly who was hunting her? Emma is spiraling, agonizing over why she was left behind in the harsh Washington foster system while her sister was hidden in Oregon. Dant pulls up a chair and lays out a genius, mobster-level scheme. They cannot just roll into a tiny town throwing questions around, or the locals will close ranks instantly. Small towns always bury their own secrets. So they are going undercover as a documentary crew. They will pretend they are doing a piece on foster care, slipping Sarah in as a random case study to sniff out the gossip. Real talk. The lesson is simple. You always need a rock-solid cover story when you walk into enemy territory. Emma has to admit, this fake documentary scheme is actually incredibly brilliant. Dante just flashes this dangerous, knowing smile, acting like it is just another Tuesday. He tells her they are packing real camera gear to make it look totally official. He wants Emma to do all the talking, knowing that paranoid small-town folks will trust a woman way more than him. The big bad mafia boss is going to play the quiet producer in the background. Emma calls him out, highly doubting a guy like him can actually keep his mouth shut. Dante just laughs, tossing files into his bag. They fly out at 8 in the morning, heading straight to the local library to dig up old records. Life lesson for you guys: sometimes the most powerful guy in the room knows exactly when to play the silent observer. Watching him pack, Emma realizes Dante is way too comfortable with this undercover stuff. He gets intensely dark for a second, admitting that building his empire meant learning how to ruthlessly dig up dirt people wanted buried. The tragedy here is brutal. He never expected to use those terrifying skills to investigate his own wife. Emma sees his pain and completely drops her guard. She grabs his hand, promising they will drag the absolute truth out in the light. Dante stares at her fingers, and for a split second, the scary mafia boss armor shatters. He genuinely thanks her for caring about Sophia, but Emma shuts that down fast, reminding him that Sophia was never a stranger. She was family, remember guys? Blood is thicker than water, even if you just found out that family exists. Dante squeezes her hand right back, silently sealing the deal. They are officially partners in crime now, ready to face whatever twist reality is waiting. Later that night, Emma is tossing and turning in her luxury bed when her friend Jessica texts in a panic, asking if she needs to call the cops. Emma texts back, explaining she is flying to Oregon to hunt down a dead woman's past like some crazy action movie. Jessica immediately ignores the danger and asks the real question: is the billionaire boss hot? Emma admits he is devastatingly handsome, but also super intense, grieving, and definitely dangerous. Her friend is completely sold on the romance. The lesson here: never let a pretty face distract you from the terrifying fact that you are playing a very dangerous game. You and both know Emma is getting pulled in way too deep here. Dante is just insanely magnetic. The guy loves Sophia so much that losing her absolutely shattered his soul, and you can see that raw pain in his eyes. Emma is terrified, but she also feels deeply needed. But get ready for this plot twist. At 2 a.m, Emma hears heavy footsteps echoing in the penthouse. She cracks her door open like a true spy and catches Dante aggressively barking orders into his phone. He demands his underground contacts pull every single file on Washington state foster placements from 28 years ago, including Emma's personal files. Guys, just because someone treats you like a partner to your face does not mean they are not digging up your darkest secrets behind your back. Dante is going full beast mode in the dark. He orders his guy to track down Emma's old caseworkers and every single document left. His logic is absolute chilling if someone intentionally separated these two sisters. He wants to know exactly who signed that paper so he can destroy them. He is out for pure blood. Emma quietly shuts her door before she gets caught. Honestly, she should be completely freaked out that this powerful guy is invading her privacy like this. But strangely enough, she feels grateful that someone finally cares enough to fight for her. The next morning, they are back on the jet heading to Portland. Dante spends the entire flight grilling her. The truth is, sometimes the people who brutally invade your space are the only ones willing to fight your battles. Up in the private jet, Dante goes into full interrogation mode. He leans in, asking Emma if she remembers anything at all before entering the system. Emma admits her brain is totally blank before age 2, except for dark, fragmented flashes of freezing cold air and social workers dragging her away. She spent her whole life thinking she was an unwanted kid, abandoned by trash parents. Finding out she actually had an older sister changes the entire narrative. Dante drops his notes, locks his intense eyes with hers, and hits her with a massive theory. What if they were never abandoned? What if they were hidden on purpose? If teenage Sophia was running for her life, maybe she left Emma behind to keep her safe. Sometimes the things that hurt us the most were actually done to protect our lives. Dante swears they are going to hunt down whatever monster Sophia was hiding from. And it is your classic, creepy small town. One dusty main street, dead silence, and a diner straight out of a horror movie. They check into a cheap, basic motel. Emma jokes that the billionaire boss must be dying with his Lux sheets fast. Dante shuts that down fast, revealing he used to sleep in his freezing car back when he was grinding to build his empire. But they do not even untack. They hit the local library immediately, because small-town libraries are absolute goldmines for dark gossip. They meet a sweet old librarian named Agnes, who completely buys their fake documentary cover story. Let me tell you, never underestimate the relentless hustle of a man on a mission. Stick with me, guys, because we are about to uncover some seriously heavy local secrets. Old Agnes starts laying out dusty files, shaking her head about how tragic the Winters girl had it. She explains that Robert and Martha Hayes took Sarah in when she was 14, loving her like their own blood, but then absolute disaster struck. Emma quietly sneaks her phone up toward as Agnes details a brutal car crash on Highway 20, Black Ice. The bitter winter of 2007. Both foster parents were killed instantly, leaving 17-year-old Sarah completely devastated. Dante asks where she went after the funeral. Agnes sighs, saying the poor girl vanished from town just to escape the awful memories. Life lesson here, guys. Sometimes running away is the only way you survive a broken heart. Let's pause the movie right here, guys. Agnes flips open a dusty yearbook straight to Sarah's senior portrait, and Emma just stares at the face of her dead sister. Look at her. Sophia actually looks genuinely happy, just a quiet, artsy kid who volunteered with animals, completely unaware of the absolute nightmare barreling toward her. Emma asks if anyone knew her secrets, and Agnes points them to Jenny Martinez, a local florist who used to be Sarah's ride or die. Emma and Dante waste zero time marching down Main Street. They walk in the flower shop. The bell rings, and Jenny looks up from her roses. The second Jen locks eyes with Emma, her face just drains of blood. Pure shock. Always remember, folks, the past never really dies. It just waits for you to walk right back in. Watch Jenny closely in this scene. She straight up stops breathing. She stares at Emma like a ghost just strolled in, gasping out Sarah's name. Emma quickly jumps in, explaining they might be long-lost sisters. The poor woman completely shatters, crying her eyes out because Emma is a dead ringer for her vanished friend. She thought Sarah finally came home after 15 years. Dante steps up, playing the smooth undercover producer, asking for an interview. Jenny takes them to the back room, swiping through old, happy photos on her phone. Seeing the dead mob wife as just a normal, smiling teenager going to prom is an absolute gut punch. It goes to show you, no matter how hard you try to reinvent yours, your roots always tie you to the people who loved you first. We are looking at the final puzzle piece here. Jenny reveals Sarah buried her dark past deep underground before moving to town. She refused to talk about her childhood, claimed the past needed to stay dead. Emma desperately asks if Sarah ever mentioned having a sister, but Jenny just shakes her head. Sarah swore she was entirely alone in the universe. Either someone was lying, or Sarah genuinely had no idea Emma existed. When Dante asks what happened after the tragic car crash, Jenny shivers. She says Sarah turned insanely paranoid, acting like the mob was hunting her down. She told Jenny to forget she existed and vanished into thin air. Listen to me on this one. When someone tells you they need to disappear, believe them, because the monsters chasing them are usually very real. Look at Dante totally playing it cool right now. Jenny is practically shaking, asking if anyone ever came looking for Sarah after she bolted. She is just desperate to know if her child friend ever found a little peace. And Dante, he looks her right in the eyes and drops a massive white lie. He says Sarah had this beautiful, happy life and passed away peaceful surrounded by family. Pure fiction, the brutal irony. Sophia died all alone in a sterile hospital room. Her heart giving out way before any proper goodbyes could ever happen. But honestly, I get it. Sometimes a soft lie is way better than a harsh truth. It shows you that protecting a good person's peace of mind is sometimes the most decent thing you can possibly do. Let the girl keep her happy memories, you know. The camera stays on Jenny as she breaks down, and Emma reaches across the counter to grab her hand. You can practically feel the miserable vibe in the room, staring at the massive hole Sophia left behind. But Emma is on a mission. She drops the million-dollar question, trying to pinpoint where Sarah was before the memory loss kicked in. Jenny hesitates, then mentions this incredibly creepy place called the House in the Woods out in Washington, near the coast. She begs them to leave it alone, swearing it is bad news. But Emma is absolutely not backing down now. They are way too close to the plot twist to walk away. They leave their numbers and bounce. Life lesson right here, folks. When you go digging for the truth, you better be ready for the monsters you find in the dark. These two are not wasting a single second of screen time. Dante hops straight on his burner phone, calling up his top-tier investigators to hunt down this mysterious coastal foster home. He is hyped up, telling Emma they are finally closing in. She is just stressing over her coffee, wondering what happens if the truth is actually a complete nightmare. Later, they are grabbing a bite at a rundown Rhodes diner when the investigator calls back. I love this shot. Dante's face goes from chill boyfriend to absolute murder mode in 3 seconds. He puts the phone down like it is a live grenade. They found it. The house was run by Richard and Susan Chen in the 90s before the state shut it down. The bitter truth is, the darkest secrets always leave a paper trail if you just know where to look. You and I need to brace ourselves, because this backstory is incredibly messed up. The place got raided and shut down over massive abuse allegations. The official files are sealed tight, but Dante's guy has insane connections and pulls the receipts. He reads off an email that drops an absolute bombshell. Emma was tossed into that house at just 6 months old, and Sarah joined her at age 4. They were stuck in that nightmare until 98 when the state finally ripped the kids out. Emma is physically shaking in her diner booth, reeling she was with her big sister for 2 whole years. Then the state split them up for their own safety. It reminds us that sometimes the system tries to fix broken things, but just ends up leaving the deepest, most permanent scars in the process. You want to talk about villains walking away clean. The Chens never caught formal charges. But the notes describe wild psychological manipulation and insane isolation tactics. It was so toxic that the state purposely scattered the kids so they would never cross paths again. Emma looks sick to her stomach. The brutal irony hits her. Sarah was 4, old enough to remember every second of the horror. That is exactly why her sister scrubbed her entire identity. She was desperate, trying to outrun her own brain. Dante grabs Emma's hand across the table, offering an out. He says they can pull the plug right now. It is a solid reminder that trauma is a heavy anchor, and sometimes the bravest thing you can possibly do is just survive and keep moving forward, whatever it takes. Dante, soft saying, they know enough and can't stop digging, but Emma, they know enough and can't stop digging. Me hardcore. Her voice gets terrifyingly steady. She says if she lived through pure terror, she deserves to know the real story. Then she drops a massive reveal on us. She confesses she has these insane recurring nightmares about being trapped in the pitch black, hearing kids scream, just pure panic mode. Her therapist always chalked it up to repressed childhood trauma, but she never knew what it was until right this second. Dante just squeezes her hand, locking in for the ride. It really shows you that running from your past only gives it power over you in your sleep. Facing your demons head-on is the only way to actually take your life back. Listen to Dante here, making a really solid promise. He tells her they will take it step by step, and the second it gets too heavy, they pull the ripcord. He says her mental health tops his need for revenge, but Emma is a total warrior now, claiming that not knowing is way worse than the truth. So the very next morning, they hit the road, driving out to this isolated spot in Washington called Hollow Creek, thick trees everywhere, giving off absolute horror movie vibes. Dante reads the intel while driving. The Chen house has been sitting dead empty since '98. The state grabbed it but never flipped the property. Luckily, Dante's guy secured them full access. The lesson here is incredibly simple. You can lock the doors on a bad place, but the ghosts of what happened there never really leave. Emma tells him straight up she is ready for this. They pull up to the end of a nasty dirt road, and the house is just looming there. A giant Victorian mansion surrounded by massive pine trees blocking out the sun. It probably looked amazing decades ago, but now it is pure nightmare fuel. Peeling paint, busted windows, a rotting front porch hanging by a thread. Emma whispers that this nightmare was her home for 2 years. The front door is literally hanging off its hinges. They step inside, and the smell of dead leaves, brack mold, and rot just punches them in the face. Wild animals have totally taken over the shadows. It goes to show that neglect ruins absolute everything, whether it is an old wooden mansion or the vulnerable kids forced to live inside it. Even with all the trash and decay, you can totally tell this place was a massive, cold operation. Dante checks his phone and confirms there were 8 kids living here when the state swooped in for the emergency extraction. They slowly walk through the creepy, hollow rooms. There is this huge, splintered kitchen table where all those kids must have eaten in dead silence. They check the living room, walls covered in gross water stains. Then they head upstairs to a super long hallway packed with tiny. Emma's voice is definitely shaking as she asks which room was hers. Dante checks the blueprints. The youngest kids were locked away on the 3rd floor. Man. It is a bitter irony how abusers really love hiding their absolute worst secrets at the very top of the house. Watch this next scene, guys, because it is heartbreaking. Dante points to a sketchy staircase. He gives Emma one last chance to back out, but she is already climbing up like she is drawn by a magnet. The 3rd floor is a dark, depressing converted attic. 4 dirty cribs shoved against the peeling walls, barely any sunlight getting through. But then, she spots it. Painted right onto the rotting wall is a bright, beautiful flower garden, totally clashing with the nightmare room. In the corner, written in terrible kid handwriting, it says, "For Emma and the babies, love, Sarah." Sarah painted that when she was 4 years old. Even in absolute hell, that little girl tried to protect her baby sister. Real love is making sunshine for someone else when you are trapped in the dark yourself. Picture this. Emma runs her fingers over those chipped, painted flowers on the wall, and the dam just completely shatters. She is sobbing, weeping for the sister she never really got to know, for their stolen childhoods, and for the insane amount of love Sarah tried to inject in this nightmare house. Dante wraps his arms around her, letting her completely fall apart against his chest, whispering that she is safe now. Emma realizes Sarah painted a literal escape room on a dirty wall, and Dante point out the brutal irony here. Sarah could never talk about her past, because remembering this place meant relieving the exact trauma of being ripped away from her baby sister. It breaks your heart, because the deepest silences usually hide the most painful goodbyes. They spend the next hour creeping through that empty house. They find little names carved in door frames and secret crayon drawings shoved in closets. You can tell these poor kids were just fighting to survive the terror, but they do not find the smoking gun. Nothing that proves exactly what the Chens did to trigger the raid. Just as they walk out, an old lady with a cane and a tiny dog rolls up on them. She gets incredibly aggressive, yelling about trespassing. Dante stays cool, flashes his state passes. and says they are looking into the old Chen property. The lady spits out their name with pure, unfiltered disgust, saying it is about time somebody did. Lesson learned here, folks. You never know who is watching. And the quiet neighbors always hold the real receipts. The old lady introduced her as Margaret Wells. She lived next door until the Chens literally forced her out. She dropped some chilling details right on the spot. She used to hear those poor kids crying late at night, watching them stare out the windows looking completely hollowed out. She squints at Emma and asks if she was one of the kids locked up in there. When Emma nods, Margaret completely drops her guard. She invites them back to her place. Her house is this super cozy spot smelling like fresh baked bread. She pours them tea and settles into her chair, admitting the Chens played the nice card when they first arrived. Take a note, guys. The absolute biggest monsters always wear the friendliest mask when they first move into the neighborhood. Let us pause right here and listen to Margaret spill the truth. She says the vibe was totally toxic from day one. These kids were way too quiet. They would just stand in the front yard like little zombies, never playing like normal children do. Dante asks the heavy question. He needs to know exactly what the Chens did. Margaret says the kids were forbidden from speaking out, but she heard the screams. The most sickening part. She watched Rich Chen lock a 5-year-old girl in a dark shed overnight as a punishment. Just pure evil. She called the authorities multiple times, but the Chens were smooth talkers who claimed the kids just had severe issues. It goes to show that a clever lie can unfortunately beat the truth if the wrong people are listening. Stick with me, guys, because we are about to unpack what really went down at that house of horrors. The state finally bought the story, but only because one kid literally busted out, sprinted to the highway, and flagged down a car while screaming about the nightmare inside. That little hero was maybe 6 years old. Her name was Sarah back then, but we know her as Sophia. Emma realized her own big sister was the mastermind who saved everyone. But wait for the brutal irony. Before the cops could slap cuffs on those evil foster parents, the Chens grabbed their dirty money and vanished into thin air. Total cowards. Here is your life lesson for the day. Sometimes the people who owe you the biggest apologies will run away before you can ever make them pay. Margaret shakes her head, remembering how these traumatized kids were just scattered to the wind and told to forget it. Emma is totally shell-shocked. She sits in the passenger seat of Dante's luxury ride, completely silent, trying to process this massive lore drop. Dante drives toward Seattle, shooting her these intense, worried looks. Finally, he breaks the silence. He tells her point blank that none of this was her fault. They were literally just helpless babies when the system completely failed them. But they still made it out alive, and Sophia clawed her way up to build an incredible life anyway. The simple life lesson here is pretty clear. You can't outrun a dark past, but you can absolutely refuse to let it be the only story you tell about yours. Emma is seriously doubting this whole fairy tale. She wonders if Sophia actually lived a good life, or if she spent her entire adulthood sprinting away from her inner demons. Dante fires back, fiercely defending his late wife. He says she found real love with him and grabbed years of true happiness. Sure, she had a vault full of dark secrets, but she survived. They pull up to the private airport, where his jet is waiting. Dante tells Emma she has a massive choice to make. Does she hunt down the Chens for brutal revenge, or does she pull a Sophia and just move on? Emma is totally frozen. She has absolute no clue what her next move should be. Honestly, the lesson here is simple. When staring down a massive crossroad, sometimes the smartest move is to take a breath and wait. Dante throws out the ultimate billionaire lifeline right here. He tells Emma to fly back to New York with him, and just chill for a few days to process this insane plot twist. Emma is way too drained to fight it. On the private flight back, she literally passes out on Dante's shoulder, and get this. For the first time in forever, her horrific nightmare completely vanished. Why? Because the monster finally has a face, and she is not fighting it solo anymore. They hit his massive penthouse late at night. They just sit there staring at the epic Manhattan skyline in total silence, until Emma finally thanks him for helping her hunt down the truth. The life lesson is pretty obvious. You can carry the heaviest baggage in the world, but it instantly gets lighter when you let somebody help you. Emma thanks him for holding her together during her epic meltdown, but Dante brushes it right off. He needed these answers just as badly. Then he hits her with this crazy intense stare and lays down the law. He tells her she is not alone anymore. Whether she goes full vigilante or walks away, he has her back. He straight up declares that since she is Sophia's blood, She is his family now. Emma points out they barely know each other, but Dante is not having it. He lost his wife, and he absolutely refuses to lose the last living piece of her. He even tucks a piece of hair behind her ear and begs her to stay in New York. Time for a quick life lesson. Loyalty is not always about time, sometimes. True loyalty is instantly forged in the fires of shared grief and totally insane trauma. Emma tries to pump the brakes, bring up her life and job back in Seattle, but Dante just smirks and drops a massive flex. He already ran a background check and knows she is barely making rent. Classic boss energy right there. He points out she is living paycheck to paycheck with zero safety net. Then he makes an offer she literally cannot refuse. He promised to use his elite art world connections to land her a high-paying gig, plus free rent in his penthouse. Emma says it is way too much, but Dante insists it is the least he can do. Emma knows she should establish boundaries with this intense widower, but the temptation is so real. The life lesson: when somebody throws you a golden ticket out of the struggle bus, pride is a toxic obstacle. You just have to secure the bag. Emma is totally exhausted from fighting the world on her own, so she folds. She agrees to stay for one single month before making any huge life choices. Dante flashes this completely triumphant grin, but come on, you and I both know how this story goes. 1 month easily morphs into 2, and then 3. Emma tries to convince her she is just processing her dark past, but she is getting way too comfortable living the high life. Dante delivers on his promise, hooking her up with an incredible curator job at a top-tier gallery. She even upgrades to her own luxury apartment in the exact same building. Listen, here is your life lesson. Comfort is incredibly dangerous. Once you get a taste of a life where all your problems are handled, walking away becomes almost entirely impossible. So these two slip into totally cozy, domestic routine. They grab morning coffees and hit up exclusive dinners, where the staff treats Dante like literal Mafia royalty. You can practically smell the fear on the waiters. They are not talking about her dead sister constantly, but Sophia is the massive elephant in the room. She is the ghost absolute haunting this luxury penthouse. One night, Emma finally calls it out. She looks around and realizes Dante has not changed a single detail since his wife died. Her photos, her art, even her old coffee mug are sitting exactly where she left them. Dante just pours more expensive wine and admits he is not ready to erase her memory. Which brings us to a solid lesson. Grief does not care about the calendar. You simply can't force someone to move on. Let us pause right here. Dante is utterly defeated, confessing that everyone wants him to just pack his dead wife into cardboard boxes and move on. Emma actually does what nobody else will. She tells him he does not need to run his grief just to make other people comfortable. She picks up a wedding photo of 2 people who had zero clue a tragedy was coming, then drops the hammer. Did he ever figure out his wife was hiding a twisted past? Dante caves. He admits Sophia used to zone out, weeping over what she claimed were just sad memories. He thought it was standard emotional baggage, not a literal house of horrors. Emma realizes her sister was drowning trying to shield him, while Dante just wishes she had trusted him. Here is the brutal life lesson. Trying to protect the people you love by keeping huge secrets usually ends up hurting them way more in the long run. Listen to his voice totally crack here. Dante admits he would have loved Sophia even harder for surviving that absolute nightmare. Emma assures him her sister knew that, which is exactly why she picked him. But then she flips the script and asks the million-dollar question. Why is this insanely wealthy guy actually keeping her around? Is she just a convenient stand-in for his dead wife? Dante takes a painfully slow sip of his wine before stripping away the lies. He admits that at first. Yes. She was just a ghost replacement to decode his wife's hidden lore. But after months together, the dynamic completely flipped. She is not the ghost's sister anymore. She is his closest confidant in this messed up world. The life lesson here. People might crash into your life for completely selfish reasons, but genuine connections can still take root in the most unexpected places. Today, you and I are going to unpack this together. Dante starts spilling his darkest, ugliest thoughts. He admits he still waits for Sophia to walk in the room, but he is also furiously angry at her. He is mad she died, mad she kept massive secrets, and mad she left him drowning in questions. And the worst part, he feels insanely guilty for being angry at a woman in a grave. He looks into Emma's eyes, realizing she is the only person who truly gets it. They are both mourning a woman who was basically a stranger. Emma respects the brutal honesty of it all. Dante slides closer and drops the real reason he has been tearing up the underworld for her past. Emma thought it was just for closure, but no. Dante pulls up an email that changes the entire game. The life lesson. Honesty is painful. But in a world built on lies, telling the ugly truth is the ultimate power move. Hit pause, because the plot twist here is massive. 2 months before Sophia passed away, she quietly established a secret trust fund. We are talking about serious, life-changing money, specifically set aside in case a biological family member ever popped up. When Emma took her DNA test, the lawyers instantly flagged it. Dante looks at her and says the fortune is officially hers. Emma just stares at the screen, looking at numbers so huge she would never have to work a miserable job again. She is completely stunned, because Sophia did not even know she was alive. But Dante explains his wife knew the past, could always claw its way back. She built a financial fortress in case her bloodline ever surfaced. The life lesson. You can bury your past under millions of dollars, but the deep anxiety of it returning will always keep you looking over your shoulder until the day you die. Watch Emma's reaction here. She instantly rejects the cash. Taking millions from a dead sister she never even knew just feels completely dirty. But Dante insists it is exactly what Sophia wanted. Then he drops a bomb that hits way harder than the money. There was something else hidden inside those legal documents. A sealed letter, strictly meant for whoever matched the DNA test. He pulls the envelope out of his desk and hands it over, swearing he never opened it. The wildest part, it is explicitly addressed to Emma. Her hands are visibly shaking as she grabs it. Seeing her own name in her dead sister's handwriting absolutely wrecks her. Sophia somehow knew her name, even after years of silence. Emma slowly unfolds the pages, reading the first gut-wrenching sentence. The lesson, money is great, but the unvarnished truth is the most valuable inheritance anyone can leave behind. This letter is an absolute emotional wrecking ball. Sophia writes that she thought about Emma every single day for 28 years, agonizing over whether she was safe. She actually hoped Emma forgot everything, praying she was too young to carry the toxic trauma of that foster home. She apologizes for never trying to find her. But she had a terrifying reason. She was paranoid that looking for Emma would somehow lead those monsters right back to her doorstep. She refused to drag her dark past into Emma's peaceful life, but Sophia never truly let go. She talks about painting imaginary gardens in that horrific attic and singing lullabies to keep baby Emma quiet. She promised to come back, even though she was just a powerless kid. The life lesson here: fear can force us to abandon the people we love. But the human heart never actually forgets the promises we made in the dark. Guys, picture this scene. Emma is reading this letter from her late sister, and the words are absolutely gut-wrenching. Sophia writes about how the state aggressively dragged them apart, how she literally screamed for Emma until the adults sedated her. But Sophia says, if you are reading this and struggling, use my money to heal. Build the beautiful life we were entirely robbed of. Then comes the biggest plot twist of the letter. She actually vouches for the billionaire mob boss, Dante. She tells Emma to trust him, saying he loved her despite all her shattered pieces. The life lesson here is one that will stick with you. Sometimes the people who were broken by the exact same storm are the only ones who know how to build a shelter for you. Emma is completely losing her mind at this point, sobbing and clutching this paper to her chest like a lifeline. Dante, this massive, intimidating guy who normally terrifies people, steps forward and pulls her into his arms. She is crying against his chest, exactly like she did back in that terrifying abandoned house. Emma chokes out that Sophia actually remembered her. Even after years of hell, her big sister never forgot her name. Dante holds her tighter, his own face looking absolutely wrecked. He tells her he is so sorry she lost her sister before they could reunite. Sorry for all their suffering. It shows you the bitterest truth. No matter how much money or power someone accumulates, you literally cannot buy back a single second of lost time. Stick with me here, because the tension just absolutely skyrockets. Emma pulls back to look at Dante, and the entire vibe completely flips. They are standing way too close. His hands are still wrapped around her. Her fingers are digging into his shirt, and you can practically see the realization hit his dark eyes. This is not just about mourning Sophia anymore. It has not been about the ghost for a hot minute. He softly breathes her name, and Emma tries to shut it down, saying they cannot do this. But get this, she does not step back, not even an inch. Dante knows all the logical reasons this is a genuine terrible idea, but he reaches up to cup her face anyway. Here is the life lesson. Sometimes the human heart completely ignores what the brain screams is a fatal mistake. Dante is going all in now. He tells her he cannot stop thinking about her, cannot stop wanting to erase the pain hiding in her eyes. He absolutely shuts down the whole psychology argument right there. He says, sure, maybe it is grief or some twisted transference. But it is also completely real. He admits he tried to fight it, tried to tell him she was just a replacement for his dead wife. Beautifully strong and brave in a totally different way. Then, boom, he kisses her, and the craziest part, Emma lets him. It feels like the biggest betrayal of her sister, yet somehow the most right thing she has ever done. It is crazy how life pushes us toward the exact thing we are terrified of, just to show us we are finally ready to be loved again. Oh man, the floodgates are officially wide open. Emma kisses him right back, grabbing his hair, letting out months of tightly coiled tension and completely chaotic feelings. When they pull apart, they are both practically gasping for air. Dant rests his forehead against hers and gives her an easy out. He says, just tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong. And I will back off and just be your friend. But Emma hits him with the painful truth. She can't tell him to stop because she has been falling for him too, and completely hating her for it. Brings up the massive elephant in the room. She is Sophia's sister. How do they even begin to navigate this mess? The brutal reality is, you can't put your own life on pause forever just for the people you lost. They agree to take things slow and keep their situation entirely off the radar. But fast forward 3 months, and Emma is packing up her apartment and moving into his massive penthouse. So much for keeping a low profile, right? The whole city starts buzzing with wild gossip about Dant's new girl, who looks exactly like his dead wife. Emma hears all the vicious whispers, catching the nasty stares from people who think they know the story. People are straight up calling her a pathetic ghost replacement. She tells Dante that everyone thinks he is just using her to keep Sophia alive. But Dante, he does not care at all. He knows what they have is real. Here is a lesson for you. When you truly know your own reality, the cheap noise from the peanut gallery means absolutely nothing. Let us hit pause right here. Guys, Dante absolutely shuts down that replacement sister theory on the spot. He pulls Emma close, making it clear he loves her for exactly who she is. The sister connection was just the crazy plot device that brought them together. Cut to exactly 1 year after that donor email flipped their universe, and they are standing at Sophia's grave. Emma had never visited before. Feeling like a trespasser until Dante pushed her to go, she kneels, touching the cold stone, wishing they had more time together. It is a brutal reminder for all of us watching. Closure is not some magical treasure you just find. It is something you have to actively build for yours, step by heavy step, even when your heart is completely broken. Emma looks straight at the headstone and tells her sister she is taking care of Dante now. She says she loves him exactly the way Sophia did, hoping Sophia is cool with that from the other side. Then our former mob boss Dante kneels next to her. He sets down some flowers and lays his heart out. He tells his late wife he will always love her, but he is entirely in love with Emma now. He takes that final letter Sophia wrote as her ultimate blessing for them to find happiness. They stay there for a while, shedding tears but also quietly celebrating. It shows you how grief and love can absolutely exist in the exact same room. Walking away, Emma squeezes his hand, thanking him for fighting through all that messy trauma to finally find her. She is thanking him for flying out to meet a total stranger and becoming her entire world. Dante drops this incredibly smooth line, saying he found her because of Sophia, but he loves her for exactly who she is. Boom, perfect movie moment. Fast forward 6 months, and he puts a ring on it. Give it another year, and they are officially married in a beautiful, intimate ceremony. They even keep photos of Sophia there, not as a ghost, but honoring the woman who linked their lives. And those shady Chens who caused all the trouble, Dante had his team look into it, and they just vanished off the map. It hits hard. But sometimes you have to accept that getting revenge will not actually fix your past. Focusing your energy on today is the only way to build a real future. Let us talk about that massive trust fund Sophia left behind. They flipped that cash into a foundation for foster kids and trauma survivors. They name it Sarah's Garden, after the mural Sophia painted in that creepy attic. It is honestly such a boss move. They take the absolute darkest parts of their history and use that money to throw light everywhere. Emma asks Dante if he thinks Sophia would approve. He hugs her from behind, saying Sophia would absolutely love what they built from the ashes of her secrets. He points out the craziest twist of all. That DNA match is the exact thing that led Emma straight to Dante. It is wild to think about. But true love really has a beautiful way of protecting you long after the person is actually gone. Daunt jokes that maybe Sophia was just making sure he would not end up a lonely hermit after she passed away. Honestly, maybe it was both. Sophia had enough heart to look out for everyone at the exact same time. Emma leans back against him, staring at this huge charity bearing her sister's real name. She gets hit with how completely insane life really is. She took a random DNA test on a whim, which flagged a match, sending her knocking on a billionaire's front door. And that door opened up to give her answers, a husband, and the family she thought she had lost forever. It shows you that one tiny, impulsive choice can literally rewrite your entire destiny. Sophia had promised to come back for her when they were just scared little kids. In her own way, she finally did. Sophia could not keep that promise while she was breathing, but through a genetic match, a pile of money, and a devoted husband who refused to stop digging, she totally delivered. She brought Emma home, 2 whole years after they tied the knot. Emma is standing in this ridiculous penthouse that is now officially their family home. They are looking at a brand new nursery with soft yellow walls and a crib that probably cost more than a sports car. Emma even painted a flower garden mural on the well, perfectly matching the one from her childhood. Daunt catches her staring and puts a gentle hand on her pregnant belly. He knows right away she is thinking about her sister in this quiet moment. It makes you realize that true love really does echo across generations, loud and clear. Emma corrects him gently, saying that in this nursery she is Sarah. She tells Daunt how unfair it is that Sarah never got to experience this normal family stuff after the nightmare they survived. But Dante spins it right around, hitting us with a perspective shift. He reminds her that Sarah did have love, a real home, and solid years of joy before the end. And now, she has a niece who is going to hear all the legendary stories about her brave aunt. Dante is totally convinced they are having a girl, saying he knew it the second she told him she was pregnant. He hugs her tight and asks if he has mentioned how incredibly grateful he is for her and this baby. It is a powerful reminder for everyone watching to stop and actually count your blessings while you still have them. Emma jokes he is slipping, because he has only said it 3 times today. Dante just bursts out laughing. Listen to this, guys. His laugh is so warm and full of life now, completely different from the dark, brooding Mafia boss she met on day 1. He promises to do better tomorrow, but right now it is time for dinner. Marie, their housekeeper who basically became the wise grandmother of the group, cooked Emma's favorite meal. Early on, Marie pulled Emma aside and told her Dante was practically drowning in grief until she showed up. Emma tries to play it down and say he saved himself, but Marie knows the real truth. Sometimes, the only thing a person needs to survive the absolute worst storm of their life is just someone willing to stand there and hold their hand. Let us kick things off right here, guys. You and I are going to unpack this absolute roller coaster together, so strap in. We have Marie acting like the overprotective mom, scolding our former mob boss Dante for working too hard. After she dips out, it is just the 2 of them on the couch. The baby is kicking like a champion. Dante smiles, calling her a fighter, just like her mom. Super right. But hold up, because Daunt suddenly drops a massive bomb. He looks Emma dead in the eye and says his private investigator finally tracked down the Chens. Yeah, those absolute monsters. Emma instant freeze up. They stopped looking for those psychos years ago, but wait for the ironclad plot twist. Richard Chen. He has already been dead for 5 whole years. And what about the wicked stepmother? Susan Chen, guys. She is rotting in an Arizona nursing home with advanced dementia. She does not even remember the horrific stuff she did to those kids. You would think Emma would be throwing a massive party. Right, but honestly, she just feels empty. It is that crushing realization that these villains basically got away with it, living full lives while leaving permanent scars. But here is the real-life lesson for today, folks. Justice does not always look like an explosive action movie shootout. Daunt pulls her close and spits straight facts. The Chens did not win. Emma and Sophia survived, and they built an absolute empire, the ultimate revenge against the people who tried to break you. Just living your absolute best life, period. Emma realized he is totally right. Why let these washed-up ghosts live rent-free in her head? Life is way too short to waste energy on toxic people who do not matter anymore. She decides right then to focus purely on the future. They have a baby girl arriving in 2 months, a charity foundation, and an epic life together. But boom, hit pause, because here comes a plot twist. Just a month later, Emma's water breaks 3 weeks early. Suddenly, our cold-blooded businessman is driving to the hospital, absolute losing his mind. He grips the steering wheel, desperately chanting that everything is fine like a broken record. Emma is literally the one in labor, perfectly chill, telling this Passo's tough guy to breathe because he is squeezing her hand so hard she is losing feeling. Our guy Dante is having a total meltdown, sweating bullets. He is terrified he is going to lose Emma exactly the same way he lost Sophia. It is that deep trauma kicking in, right? But Emma looks him dead in the eye and shuts that anxiety down. She tells him she is not Sophia, and she doesn't have a bad heart. She tells him to trust her. Guys, sometimes in life, you just have to take a leap of faith and trust that you finally get a happy ending. Fast forward 15 grueling hours, and boom, Seraph Sophia Morty enters the chat, 7 pounds, jet black hair, and screaming loud enough to wake the dead. And Dante, this hardened, untouchable boss, takes a look at his tiny daughter, totally breaks character, and just starts bawling his eyes out. She is perfect, he whispers. Emma watches this ruthless businessman turn into a total puddle, knowing he is going to spoil this kid absolutely rotten. Her heart is practically bursting out of her chest. She breaks down, thanking him for finding her, and for giving her this beautiful family after she spent 28 years totally alone. She finally has real peace, guys. But Dante flips the script and thanks her instead. For what? For being brave enough to answer a random phone call from a stranger. Think about that for a second. If you never step outside your comfort zone, you will never find your destiny. He thanks her for boarding that flight and falling for a grieving dude carrying a ton of emotional baggage. And Emma, she just smiles at him. That is the absolute best baggage she could ever hope to inherit. Look at these two, holding court in this hospital room like absolute royalty. Marie is rolling in with homed food. The gallery sends massive bouquets, and get this, some of Dante's shady associates actually drop by. Picture these terrifying mob enforcers awkwardly cooing over a tiny infant. It is hilarious, but honestly, it hits right in the chest. On their final night, Emma watched Dante rocking Lil Sarah and drops a heavy truth. This kid is never going to wonder if she was wanted. They are snapping that toxic cycle in half right here, and that is the lesson. It does not matter how brutally dark your own start was. You always have the absolute power to write a completely different, beautiful story for the next generation. This baby has the whole world waiting for her. Dante is locked in. He promises they will teach Sarah all about the absolute legends she was named after, 2 incredibly resilient women who crawled through hell and came out on top. When they finally bring the baby home, the first stop is that iconic nursery with the hand-painted garden mural. Dante lifts her up like Simba in The Lion King. He uses his softest dad voice to tell her about the aunt who painted flowers in the darkest times imaginable. He tells her this is her legacy, pure strength, beauty, and straight-up survival. And what does the baby do? She just yawns, completely unbothered by his epic speech. But honestly, that brings up a beautiful point. True strength is not about flexing or bragging to the world. It is simply the quiet, unshakable legacy you leave behind. You and I both know that trying to explain this wild organ donor, Mafia-level plot twist to a newborn is totally pointless. Someday she will get whole crazy rundown, but today, she is just safe, loved and chilling. We hit the fast-forward button, and their charity foundation completely blows up in the best way. They are out here funding therapy and dropping scholarships for foster kids. And here is the wildest part of the movie. Dante literally steps back from his giant real estate empire. The absolute alpha boss just decides he has made enough cash and walks away. People are totally confused, but he shuts them down instantly. It proves a massive truth at some point. Mindlessly chasing money does not mean a single thing if you are not using your power to make a real difference. The director jumps us to Sarah's second birthday for a massive ribbon cutting at the foundation's new headquarters. They literally named it the Sarah and Sophia Center. Emma's standing there, looking at the glowing letters, taking in the heavy weight of this journey. 2 sisters, ripped apart by a tragic system, brought back together by a crazy DNA match and pure fate. Emma tells Dante both women would be incredibly proud, but Dante, smooth as ever, corrects her. He says they are not 2 people, but 2 halves of one absolute legend. Sarah survived, Sophia thrived, and together they orchestrated this entire romance from beyond the grave. She was the greatest secret matchmaker in history. It is a beautiful reminder that real love outlasts absolutely everything. The paparazzi are eating this up, snapping pictures as Dante pulls Emma in for a kiss. But later that night, the tone shifts. The cameras are gone, the house is dead quiet, and Emma catches Dante alone in his study. He is flipping through old Polaroids of Sophia, looking completely heartbroken. He admits he still misses her. And guys, this is where Emma shows pure class. She does not throw a jealous fit. She totally validates his pain. There is a huge life lesson right here. Moving forward does not mean you have to completely erase the people who shaped you. Dante looks at her, making sure she knows that loving her is not some sneaky betrayal of his first wife. He genuinely believes Sophia engineered this setup to keep him happy, and to keep Emma fiercely protected. Emma agrees completely. Sophia's letter gave Emma explicit instructions to trust this guy. It was basically a cheat code handed down from beyond the grave. Sophia knew exactly what she was doing. She knew these two broken people were going to need each other to survive the fallout. Dante finally closes the photo album, looking insanely grateful for the family they have built together. Emma leans into his shoulder and asks the big question. What would Sophia actually think about all this? About their little girl, the massive foundation, everything. Dante does not hesitate for a second. He knows she would be thrilled that an insane amount of good came out of her own tragedy. It shows you that even from the darkest, most painful moments, you can still build something truly beautiful. Dante laughs, saying Sophia would have spoiled little Sarah absolutely rotten, his master plan. He and Emma will just have to do double the spoiling to make up for it. They make a solid pact to give this kid the epic, safe childhood that neither of them ever experienced. Stick with me here, because you and I know how fast time flies in these movies. Boom. Years flash by. Sarah turns into this incredibly bright, curious 4-year-old kid who is absolutely obsessed with art. They do not hide her history. Either, they slowly feed her the epic lore about Aunt Sophia in little kid-friendly bites. When what would have been Sophia's 40th birthday rolls around, the whole family packs up and heads to the cemetery. It is finally time to pay respects to the absolute legend herself. Little 4-year-old Sarah marches right up to the massive marble headstone, looking completely serious, and starts talking to it. She tells the stone that Mommy says you are my aunt, and you painted pretty gardens. Then she brags that she paints too. Guys, the absolute emotional damage of this scene is unreal. Emma watches this pure kid connect with a ghost. Feeling the painful circle of her life finally close, Emma painted to survive, Sophia painted to cope. And now this little girl carries the torch purely for fun. Dante leans in and whispers that Sarah inherited Sophia's artistic genius and Emma's titanium backbone. Emma jokes that her only contribution was anxiety, but honestly, here is the lesson. The messy quirks we hate about ourselves are actually just part of our magic. Dante shuts that self-doubt down immediately, reminding her they both put in the absolute work to survive. They drop the flowers and just stand there. A total powerhouse family forged straight out of brutal heartbreak, massive plot twists, and pure fate. Emma thinks about how one random DNA registry email completely flipped her entire universe. Sophia's genius moved to sneak that trust fund provision into her. Will literally pulled her sister and husband together from nowhere. You and I are going to look at this ending together and decide one thing. Fate is absolute real, even from the grave. Sophia was playing master-level chess, setting up the board to protect the people she loved. Emma whispers a final, tearful thank you to the stone, while Dante locks hands with his girls. Alright guys, buckle up because the cinematic lore drop of the century is happening. 5 years have passed since the absolute roller coaster brought Dante and Emma together. Their daughter Sarah is 9 now, and she is asking the real heavy-hitting questions. She is sitting at the table, like a little detective, demanding to know why there are 0 pictures of Aunt Sophia, and why her mom never met her. Talk about a tense family dinner. Emma and Dante share a panicked look, realizing they finally have to spill the tea on this insane family backstory. They move the kid to the living room, hit her with some hot chocolate to soften the blow, and get ready to drop the ultimate truth bomb. Sharing painful truths is terrifying, but honestly, carrying a massive secret is always infinitely heavier. Emma lays out the craziest origin story ever. She explains how she and Sophia were separated at birth by absolute villains. Told aware they were sisters. Then total plot twist. A random blood test connects Emma to Dante, who was desperately searching for clues about late wife. Little Sarah is doing the math in real time. She realized her aunt basically match-made her parents from beyond the grave. Dante is sweating pure relief that she thinks this is cool and not traumatic. He tells her that Sophia gave him the ultimate gift, which was Emma and Sarah herself. But then the poor kid starts crying because her aunt never even got to meet her. Here is a quick lesson for all of us. Even the absolute most beautiful gifts in life can come wrapped in a little bit of sadness. Sarah sits there wishing she could have met her aunt asking if Sophia would have even liked her. Emma pulls her in tight, dropping the ultimate validation. She tells the kid she inherited Sophia's insane art skills and her huge heart. Then they unload the rest of the backstory. They describe tiny 4-year-old Sophia painting bright flowers in a creepy attic just to keep her baby sister smiling. They explain how Sophia literally ran away to save the people she loved, surviving absolute nightmares but still choosing to create pure beauty. Sarah is soaking all of this in. She is old enough to understand the tragedy, but pure enough to see the absolute magic in it. She looks at her parents and declares her aunt a literal superhero. It just goes to show you guys that true, raw courage leaves an echo forever. Pause the movie right here. Guys, Sarah literally looks at her parents and calls her dead aunt a real-life superhero. And honestly, she's not wrong. Dante is sitting there, completely choking back tears, telling his daughter she inherited all of Sophia's mutant abilities. Her strength, her kindness, her freakish ability to pull actual art out of absolute trauma. And then it hits the kid. She carries the exact same name. Sarah for the brave little girl, and Sophia for the absolute tank of a woman who saved them. When Sarah asked to take her own painting to the cemetery to show off to a ghost, grab the tissues. It is a brutal but beautiful reminder that the only way we keep the dead alive is by carrying their fire. Cut to Saturday, and this kid is clutching a folder of her absolute best artwork like his top secret government intel. She has been grinding all week just to flex on her aunt's headstone. She props these vibrant, massive flower garden paintings against the cold granite, and the irony is heavy here, folks. It is the exact same bright imagery Sophia used to paint while locked in that horrific attic. Trauma skipped a generation, but the raw talent definitely stuck around. Sarah just stands there, pure confidence, introducing hers to the grave and bragging about her skills. Emma and Dante just stand back, watching this tiny human bridge a gap they thought was lost forever. True family bonds do not just survive death. They rewrite the whole ending. You and I have watched enough movies to know how this scene goes, but it still hits hard. Emma stands there staring at the grass, feeling this rock-solid presence, not in some cheesy, haunted ghost way, but like a foundation she can finally build a life on. Everything she has, the safety, the crazy trust fund, the family, is all because Sophia ate the pain and survived the trenches. Emma whispers a quiet thank you to the dirt, promising to keep the family safe. Right on cue, the wind kicks up through the trees. Call it a cheap cinematic coincidence if you want, but Emma takes it as a nod from the other side. They leave the paintings right there on the lawn. It just proves that raw gratitude is the only anchor you need in a totally chaotic world. Cruising home in the back seat, Sarah hits her mom with one of those heavy, existential kid questions. Is Aunt Sophia watching them from heaven? Emma keeps it completely real, dodging the cliché stuff. She says she just hopes Sophia is hyped about the massive foundation they built to help helpless kids. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah drops an absolute wisdom bomb. She compares their whole bloodline to a literal phoenix, rising out of the ashes of absolute misery to create something epic. Dante catches Emma's eye in the rearview mirror. Totally mind blown that a kid just summed up their entire tragic backstory. They officially claim the title of the Phoenix family. No matter how badly your universe burns down, you can always build a castle from the ashes. Fast forward to later that night. Emma and Dante are doing the classic parenting stare, watching their kid sleep. Emma looks at the glowing garden mural and whispers that they finally won the game. They gave Sarah the completely boring, drama-free childhood they were robbed of. But Dante, he is not about to just sit back and chill on his victory lap. He hits pause on the peaceful moment and drops a massive new plot twist. He wants to weaponize their foundation, using high-tech genealogy tools and DNA databases to hunt down siblings who were ripped apart by the broken foster system. It is full-blown detective work. Remember this, guys. Surviving your own nightmare is great, but a blessing is totally useless unless you use it to rescue someone else. Let us pause and look at this together, because Dante is making the ultimate pitch. He asks Emma to imagine how many siblings are out there right now, totally blind to the fact that their brother or sister is still breathing. Emma gets overwhelmed, pointing out that a massive manhunt like this would drain a fortune. But wait, Dante is a literal billionaire. He shuts down the financial panic instantly. They have the crazy wealth, the infrastructure, and the tragic backstory to make people care. He is begging to launch this, so nobody else has to sit through 28 years of agonizing silence. He admits his life was completely empty before she gave it meaning. It just shows that true wealth is finding a reason to wake up that isn't just counting cash. Dant is completely dialed in now, hyper-focused on building a foolproof system, so no kid ever gets tossed in that nightmare separation again. Emma takes a beat to process the sheer scale of this master plan. Then, the camera basically zooms in on her face, as she remembers that one random registry email that flipped her entire universe. She realized Dant is dead right. She gives him the green light, officially name it the Sarah and Sophia Sibling Reunification Project. Dante is absolutely swoon over her drive to turn their mutual trauma into a massive societal win. But Emma stays completely grounded, crediting her dead sister for teaching her how to extract beauty from absolute horror. Never let your darkest chapters dictate the ending of your story. 6 months later, this massive project drops, and the media completely loses their minds. I mean, you literally cannot write a better headline. A grieving billionaire marries his dead wife's long-lost sister, and now they are dropping millions to fix broken families. The internet eats it up. The viral hype floods their inbox with cold cases from all over the country. Within 12 months, they managed to reunite 43 pairs of siblings screwed over by the system, and they film every single one of these reunions, blasting them online. It is just raw, unfiltered joy replacing decades of absolute agony. It is a brilliant strategy, proving that when you blast a giant spotlight on a miracle, you give terror-fed people the courage to finally start looking. Cut to Emma sitting at her desk, ugly crying over a viral video of 2 grown men hugging after being separated at birth. She points at the screen, reeling she and Sophia could have had that exact moment. Dante slides in with an incredibly smooth line, telling her she is literally living out the reunion her sister never got to see. Then he pulls up the project dashboard and drops a massive flex. 200 active investigations, 200 families about to get hit with the ultimate plot twist. Dante hypes up their little squad, laying out the timeline. Sophia survived the fire, Emma thrived in the aftermath, and little Sarah is grabbing the torch. One single sacrifice can literally fund 1,000 daily miracles if it falls into the right hands. They hit a serious parenting roadblock. Little Sarah starts asking real questions about the actual villains of the movie, the monster running the Chen foster home. Dante and Emma have to pause and debate how much pitch-black trauma you can legally drop on a 9-year-old. But they decide to go with the honest route. They keep it PG, sure, but they refuse to sugarcoat the evil. Because you have to see the dark to respect the light. They sit out in the garden and spill the whole brutal backstory. Sarah just listens, absolutely locked in. They make sure this kid understands that while the horror movie is over, the boss-level emotional armor they built is forever. A terrifying past, when dragged out in the broad daylight, is a past that can never hurt you again. Guys, you have to appreciate this moment. After hearing all that heavy lore, Lit Sarah just drops the ultimate realization. She figures out that Aunt Sophia was not just some tragic victim waiting for a rescue. She was a straight-up legend who put the entire family tree on her back and carried them to safety. Emma confirms it, admitting that Sophia's sacrifice 30 years ago is the only reason this bloodline even exists today. And does Sarah crack under the weight of that legacy? Not even a little bit. She completely locks in. She looks her parents dead in the eye and vows to join the family operation to save other kids. True bravery does not just save one life in the moment. It echoes through the decades to build a literal empire of unstoppable hope. Dante immediately steps in the scene with ultimate dad energy, hyping his kid up to the moon. He tells her she is already living the Sophia legacy just by standing up to schoolyard bullies. Then, we get the classic movie time skip. Fast forward a few years, and Sarah has evolved from a fierce teenager into hardcore social work major in college. She is grinding nonstop, volunteering at shelters, and plotting to completely dismantle the corrupt child welfare system from the inside out. During winter break, she drops her master thesis on them, a total system overhaul with 0 kids left behind. Talk is incredibly cheap in this world, but sweating through the daily grind to turn a child promise into a full-blown revolution, that is how you win the game. Listen up, guys, because this is where the movie completely flips the script on us. We see the mom just glowing in the crowd, watching Sarah Sophia Morty step up to the microphone. This kid is 22 now, and she is an absolute nightmare for every corrupt politician in the city. The irony here is so sweet it hurts. The exact same broken system that chewed up their family is now begging for mercy from the daughter they created. They are throwing this massive $1 million gala to celebrate 20 years since that random donor email changed their lives forever. Hit pause right here and think about it. The heaviest trauma you carry does not have to be your grave. Sometimes, the absolute worst day of your life is just the opening scene of your legendary comeback story. You and I have to appreciate the absolute mic drop happening right now. Sarah stands in front of these billionaires and completely tears their hearts out. She tells them the brutal truth about Aunt Sophia, a woman who crawled through hell, escaped, and played absolute chess from beyond the grave just to keep her little sister safe. That DNA trap she set. It is the only reason Sarah even exists today, and get this. They have used that exact method to put 3,000 broken families back together. The whole room is sobbing. Dante reaches over, grabs his wife by the hand, and quietly thanks her for getting on that plane 20 years ago. The lesson is simple but heavy. One blind leap of faith in the dark can end up saving thousands of lives. Dante is sitting there, looking at the woman who handed him a second chance at life, completely ignoring the fact that their relationship started out like a twisted crime thriller. She looks right back and thanks him for sending that private jet when she was quite literally at rock bottom. Fast forward to later that night, and they are walking into their massive penthouse. If you look closely at the set design here, you see it. The sad shrines are gone. The room is filled with pictures of the life they built from absolute rubble. She looks at Dante and asks if he ever regrets rolling the dice on their insane, messy trauma bond. He does not even blink. Never. Write this down. Guys, the strongest, most unbreakable relationships are usually forged in the middle of a total nightmare. He pulls her in close and drops a line that hits so hard, it will knock the wind out of you. He tells her she was the answer to a prayer he never even knew how to pray. Both of them know Aunt Sophia set this entire thing up from the other side, pulling the strings so her shattered family could finally win. They look out over the glowing Manhattan skyline, and you can just feel the weight of everything they survived. Think about the wild plot armor here. This whole empire started with a random, desperate email to a DNA registry that evolved into knocking on a billionaire's door, which turned into a grief-stricken marriage. And now they rule the city. The bitter truth. Sometimes the absolute lowest point in your life is just the universe setting up an epic plot twist. We really have to pause and respect the absolute tactile genius of Sophia. She saved her little sister twice. First, by taking the hits in that nightmare house they grew up in, and second, by leaving a breadcrumb trail after she died that dropped her sister right on a billionaire's doorstep. Her final letter promised she would never be alone, and man, did she deliver. Now her sister has this incredibly loyal husband, a kid who is practically running the city, and a fortune. Standing by the window, she just whispers a quiet thank you into the empty air. It breaks your heart because you realize Sophia never got to enjoy any of this peace herself. But here is the lesson to take away from all this pain. True loyalty does not care about death. It protects its own, no matter what. The exact second she whispers that thank you, a massive gust of wind violently shakes the penthouse glass. Come on, guys. You and I both know exactly what the director is doing here. That is Sophia, reaching straight through the veil just to say she heard every single word. It is a crushing reminder of a sister's love, breaking all the rules of reality just to check in. It wraps up this insane movie perfectly. They took the ugliest parts of human nature and forged them into a weapon for good. And this brings us to the final, bleeding truth of the story. No matter how dark your backstory gets, or how many pieces you are broken into, you can still build an empire out of the wreckage. Never stop swinging for the people you love, because they are the only thing that matters.
Emma grows up believing she is alone. She has no parents, no siblings, and no clear history. Her life is shaped by foster care, uncertainty, and the painful belief that she was abandoned. But when she learns about Sophia, everything changes. She discovers that she was not forgotten. She was loved. Sophia, once named Sarah, remembered Emma even after decades of separation. She painted flowers for her baby sister in a dark attic. She screamed when they were separated. Later, as an adult, she created a trust fund and wrote a letter in case Emma was ever found. This is one of the most touching lessons in the story. Family love can survive distance, silence, and even death. Emma and Sophia never get to meet as adults, but their bond still shapes the entire story. Sophia's memory leads Emma to Dante. Her letter gives Emma comfort. Her trust fund becomes the foundation for helping foster children and trauma survivors. In this way, Sophia's love continues to act in the world even after she is gone. The story teaches that family is not only about living together or sharing daily memories. Sometimes family is a promise kept across time. Sometimes it is a name written in a letter, a mural painted in a dark room, or a legacy built to protect someone you may never see again. Dante also becomes part of Emma's family, not because of blood, but through grief, honesty, and love. Together, they honor Sophia not by staying trapped in the sorrow, but by building something meaningful from her memory. For viewers, the message is beautiful. Family can be lost, found, remembered, and created. The deepest family bonds are not always visible, but they can still guide us home.